If you play PC games, you already know the ultimate display upgrade is an OLED panel. Perfect blacks, instant response times. But for years, getting one meant paying a massive premium. You usually had to clear a price floor of at least $800 to $1,000 just to get your foot in the door and experience true OLED performance. That barrier just broke. Alienware released the AW2726DM, and it costs exactly $350. This chart tracks the entry price of OLED gaming monitors over the last 3 years. We've seen a slow, steady decline from $1,000 down to $800 and occasionally $600 on sale. But until now, we haven't seen a sheer cliff drop straight down to $350. You would expect a price cut this deep to gut the spec sheet, but Alienware somehow kept a 27-inch 1440p panel, a 240Hz refresh rate, and a 3-year warranty that actually covers burn-in. But the math of consumer electronics is unforgiving. You don't slash a price tag by 60% without making extreme technical and physical compromises somewhere. Determining if this screen fits your setup means looking at exactly which corners Alienware kept, and if they ruin your specific daily workflow. Let's start with where this monitor excels. If you're coming from a standard IPS panel, firing up a game on this screen is an immediate, obvious upgrade. You get lush contrast and true deep blacks that an LCD just can't physically produce. With a 240Hz refresh rate, you get ultra-fast, blur-free motion clarity. In fast-paced shooters, the image stays perfectly crisp even when whipping the camera around. Turning on Windows 11 HDR pushes the panel further, pulling out vibrant colors and bright highlights that make lighting effects pop out of the shadows. But here is the first major friction point. Windows handles HDR poorly. When you turn it on, the operating system triggers HDR for every connected display at the exact same time. If you have a multi-monitor setup with a standard IPS screen next to this OLED, that secondary display doesn't have the hardware for true HDR. Instead, it gets forced into a washed-out, terrible gray hue during regular desktop use. The only real workaround is manual management. You have to use a keyboard shortcut to toggle HDR on right as you launch a game, and then manually turn it back off the second you return to your desktop. At $350, the raw gaming performance offers a massive return on investment, but it demands you tolerate daily software micromanagement to keep your multi-monitor setup looking normal. The specific type of panel Alienware used here is called QD-OLED, and it comes with its own strict environmental rules. This split-screen comparison shows one of its main advantages. On the left, QD-OLED renders dark gray scenes perfectly clean and uniform. On the right, competing OLED panels often struggle here, showing a splotchy, uneven texture in the shadows. But QD-OLED has a physical weakness when it comes to ambient room light. If you place this monitor in a bright or sunlit room, the panel actually fails to maintain true black. The ambient light bounces around inside the display, shifting those perfect darks into a noticeable dark purple tint. To hit this budget price point, Alienware also capped the panel's overall brightness. It is visibly dimmer than the more expensive WOLED options on the market during daytime conditions. Your physical environment strictly dictates the picture quality you get. In a dark room, it is flawless. In a sunlit office, the image is visibly compromised. This brings us to the hybrid worker, the person who needs one screen to crunch spreadsheets from 9 to 5 and play games at night. For productivity, this display has a severe text clarity issue. The physical sub-pixel layout of this specific panel simply does not render clean, sharp edges on standard text. This diagram illustrates the problem. When we zoom in on standard black text against a white background, you can see distinct red and green halos bleeding off the edges of the letters. This color fringing takes a physical toll. If you spend hours reading, writing, or coding, your eyes will constantly try to focus past those blurry edges, forcing you to squint and accelerating eye strain. Then there are the physical hardware cuts Alienware made to get the price this low. They completely removed all USB accessory hubs from the monitor. There is no built-in spot to plug in your mouse, keyboard, or webcam, which is a standard feature on nearly every other work display. Between the aggressive port removal and the eye-fatiguing text rendering, this monitor is actively hostile to full-time office work. The AW2726DM is not a universal do-it-all display, and you shouldn't buy it treating it like one. To decide if the trade-offs are worth the savings, we can map this out. This flowchart starts with one question: what is your primary use case? Let's look at the first path: dedicated gaming. If you play PC games in a room where you can control the lighting, paying $350 for 240 Hz speed and OLED contrast is an absolute instant buy. Now for the second path: text and productivity-heavy use. If you spend 8 hours a day staring at spreadsheets or code, avoid this monitor entirely. Stick to a high-refresh IPS panel to save your eyes. And for everyone, there is one final caveat regarding multi-monitor setups. If you run a dual-monitor setup mixing this OLED with an IPS screen, you must accept the daily friction of toggling your Windows HDR settings to keep colors accurate. The Alienware AW2726DM brings OLED technology to a budget price point. Getting that value requires being honest about exactly how you use your desk.